Hi there. I wanted to talk to you about the books that I was able to read last month. I'm gonna make this a habit. I know I am. I'm going to set big, lofty reading goals, and who knows if I'm gonna make them? Probably not. But at least I'm gonna try. And one day I might actually do it. You just wait. How was it that I was able to actually read two really good books last month? They were awesome. I mean, one I don't think was literature. I don't think that people are going to study it in school or anything, but it was fun to read, and I love insects. And the other one could be dissected a little bit. It was kind of something that is modern, that's written in a way that it almost converses with an older book. Now, it's been a long time since I read the older book, so I have to read it again to establish further what I'm thinking. But anyway, I'll get into that while I review the book. So, the book that was the literary book is James by Percival Everett. This book, this book was a good book. It was a good book. And there's things about the book that I don't like reading about, but are factual. These are the things that were happening at that time, and these were the thoughts and the ideas of people. And it's hard to swallow, but it happened. So deal with it. And the writing of this book makes it so you're able to deal with it. I very much liked it. Now, if you haven't heard about this book, and I know there's a lot of people that have talked about this on YouTube, this is the story of a character from the Huckleberry Finn story by Mark Twain, I believe it was. I read that book way, like, for a long time, I didn't think I actually read it. But thinking back, I must have. But it was a long time ago. I'm talking about like over 20 years ago that I read that story. So James is Jim in the story of Huckleberry Finn. This is his story. This is who was he as a person? What was he up to? There are parts in the Huckleberry Finn story where they separate, and the question is, what was he doing in that time when they were separated? And this goes into that. And I think that the reason the name that he has in Huckleberry Finn is Jim, and this is James, is because actually he's James. He's a very eloquent man. He is a very thoughtful individual. And unfortunately, at that time, people of color and minorities didn't have rights. A lot of times they were slaves and they were persecuted for everything and anything. And he had to dumb down himself. And he had to not be his complete self so that he would be safe. But he was always James. But his outward persona was Jim. And so this is a lovely book. This book, There's parts of this book where he's having language lessons with the children, and they're speaking very well, and he's telling them what is wrong with the responses that they're thinking about giving for this scenario that he made up. And the right thing to do is to not be smart, is to not be eloquent, is to know the language that is proper, but to know the language that will keep you safe. And so it talks about that. It talks about like classism. It talks about people that are activists that are just doing things for performance sake, but aren't actually an ally. This book talks about lots of different things, and I very much adore that it was read. Or not read, but written. I very much adore that these themes were written about so eloquently and describe the book so well, and don't feel like something that was a point that feels like it was kind of thrown into the book. It feels very intentional in the book. And there's a lot to this book that might be hard to read. I didn't find it to be a hard read. I found that aspects of it were hard to comprehend, like how people could be so horrible. That's always something that's very hard for me to deal with. I mean, I love horror movies. You guys have seen my horror movie reviews. It's not that. But when I read stuff about apartheids and slavery and whatnot, it's really hard for me to digest that people as a society can decide that this is fine, that this is the way to be. So hard for me to deal with. But I'm going on a tangent. I'm going to stop now. If you haven't read this book, I recommend it. Only if you want to. If you think it's going to be too triggering, of course, don't listen to me. But I thought this was well written and well worth the time that I took to read it and think about it and whatnot. I'm going to read it again, for sure. Now, the other book that I read for last month, and I'm going to put it up on screen, The Swarm by Arthur Herzog. And I'm sorry if I butchered that name. I very much enjoyed that book. I very much did. Because the book did two things. The book talked a lot about insects. I love bugs, and I have no fear when it comes to bees and wasps and spiders and whatever. I'm good to go. And so it talked a lot about that. But it also talked about how people are stupid and will do things like pesticides and whatnot that end up destroying the bad insects that they don't want to destroy their crops, but also the insects that eat those insects. And then they get bigger problems and bigger problems, and then insects become impervious to the methods that were used to eradicate them. And this is a story that talks about killer bees that become, I don't know what the word is, they are immune to the pesticides that usually are used to eradicate them. But also, they have metabolized that substance. And when they sting you, their venom contains that chemical. So people are dying en masse. People are poisoned. Not just, the people that are sensitive to bee stings, but, regardless. And it only takes 2 or 3 bee stings for you to actually have a poisonous reaction, because it's not like you digested it. It's going into potentially your bloodstream really quick and whatever. And so the book follows scientists trying to figure out ways that they can eradicate a swarm of killer bees that have adapted to have this strategy. And also, these bees have figured out how to make insulation so that they don't die in winter, or they have less possibility of dying in winter. So, yeah, it was a good book that way. I really enjoyed it. Now, I can see how this book really worked as a film. I can see that. It would have been a great film. In fact, I want to put it on my list of films that I want to watch. I want to see how they did it, because the book translates probably so well. I want to see what they did. Now, what was I going to say? I don't remember. It's going to come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not a book that gives you lots of punches. It's not a book that has lots of twists or whatever. You can kind of see where things are going to go. It's not that mysterious. It's just interesting. It's just a fun read. So check it out. I definitely enjoyed it. I don't know how I had 2 such different book experiences in February, but both of them were great. Anyway, pick those up if you want to. I am going to come out with another video of what my plans are for this month, and yeah, we'll see where I end up. Anyway, that's it for me, but I hope you're having the best day in the situation that you find yourself in today, and I'll talk to you later.